Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Sisters Keeper podcast, where we discuss how having a core group of women surrounding you as you navigate some of the important moments of your life's journey is vitally important for all women. I am your host, Dr. C, and for this episode, I have the extreme pleasure of having Minister Sylvia with me this morning. Good morning, Minister Sylvia. How are you?
Good morning. I am doing great. Thank you for asking.
Amen. Good to see you this morning. Welcome to Sisters Keeper podcast. And on this podcast, we take time out to discuss some of the precious moments that we experience throughout our life journey. And we never know what life is going to throw at us. And so some of the different guests will be speaking about their business opportunities. Be speaking about their life's journey. And today we are going to discuss a topic that has impacted people not only throughout the United States, but throughout the world at large. And that is human trafficking. So, Minister Sylvia, for the viewing audience who may not be familiar with what human trafficking is, explain to us what it is and the various facets of it.
Sure, thank you. So, what is human trafficking, right? Big question. There's a lot of myth, but human trafficking is a modern day slavery.
Mm,
It is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of a person by means of threat of use of force or other forms of coercion, of sorry, my tongue's a little twisted, but abduction, of
okay.
fraud or deception, of the abuse of power or of a position of vulnerability, or the giving or receiving of payment or benefit to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. Exploitation includes sexual exploitation, forced labor or services, servitude, or the removal of organs.
Mm,
So there are roughly 49.6 million enslaved today. 26% of that are children, and 14.5K and 17.5K victims are trafficked into the US annually. So, human trafficking is believed to be the world's fastest growing criminal enterprise and is an estimate of 150 billion a year global industry.
wow.
So there are actually different types of trafficking.
Uh-huh.
And so these are sex trafficking, forced labor, domestic servitude, begging rings, organ removal, and forced marriages.
Oh, wow.
So there's different ways and a lot of ways that people are ending up being trafficked by false job advertisements sold
Mm,
by family, false boyfriend, abduction, trafficked by a friend, false immigration, and forced marriages.
wow. That's a lot of information that you share, a lot of statistics. Thank you for that. And thank you for clarifying exactly what it is. But some of the things that jumped out to me was modern day slavery. And of course, we know sex trafficking is probably one of the largest, but forced marriages, that's new to me. I wasn't aware of that. And then
Mhm.
human trafficking. No, sorry, not human trafficking. You said organ for the organs. Yeah, we know that that's pretty big because people are in such great need of organs when their own organs fail and they need transplants. So organs are coming in because that's big money. Uh, but one of the really important things that you said was human trafficking does not have an age. You said children, and I know children all the way up to adults. So there is no age barrier, there is no gender barrier, and there is no regional barrier. So it impacts the entire world. So my next question, Minister Sylvia, for you is, when did human trafficking first impact your life and in what manner?
Well, the first time that it actually impacted my life was 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Okay.
Yes. So 10 years ago, I myself as a parent did not know about human trafficking. When I heard about the word trafficking, was that my understanding of that was actually of is a regular person that's pimped out, right? So when I
Mm-hmm.
heard the word of human trafficking and the word pimp in there, for
Mm-hmm.
me, my understanding and how I was raised, a pimp to me was someone pimped out, meaning that person, has money, they're dressed, with their nice clothes, and that's what I thought a pimp was. So
Okay.
10 years ago, this actually hit home, you know. Um, it 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 is so close that one of my one of my daughter was actually a victim of that,
Okay.
and that is how I became aware of what was going on, but didn't exactly understood how it took place. But what I
Okay.
did notice was the behavior was different. As a mother, I've always talked to my children, talk to them about the dangers out there, talk to them about, sexual abuse,
Mm-hmm.
but never about human trafficking because I didn't know human trafficking ever existed.
Right. And I know it's been around for a while, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. So more information is available now. So I
Yes,
can understand being unaware 10 years ago. And even today, there's so many people who are unaware because we have the mindset that is going to happen to somebody else, is not going to happen to me or mine. So I am so sorry to hear that it did hit home. Now, you said with your daughter, behaviors were different. Explain what you mean by that.
so by the behaviors is meaning, as I mentioned, I communicated with my daughter, but the behaviors that I noticed was that she lost interest in school. She was being a little disobedient. She was isolating herself from family, just not asking for permission to go out. And this started at a very early age, which was at the age of 14.
Okay,
So
14.
she's in, yes, 14. So during this actually, so I just want to go back also, which I mentioned the different forms of human trafficking, right?
Yes.
So human trafficking, like you said, there's no age, but there's also what is called child trafficking. Like I mentioned, my daughter was only 14 years old.
Yes.
Um, and as being Hispanic in my culture, is that I didn't think it was a problem. So when I heard word from my daughter's friends that she was seeing an older guy, I really didn't pay attention to that because of my culture. Um, being an older man, I didn't see was a problem or wrong with that. But
Okay.
right, so because that happened to my mother. My mother, how she told me how my dad took her from her home at the age of 14. She was already a
Mm.
mother at the age of 15,
Okay.
right? So, and further down the line, also finding more information about trafficking. That is when I became aware that a child cannot give consent to an adult. If the child is 18 and under, you cannot give consent because you're a child to a person to have sexual, even though they may say, well, no, she said it was okay. No,
Right. That's true.
right?
Legally, they cannot. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, and that usually happens a lot with cases that I've seen is that the person may say, no, well, she told me she was 17 and she gave consent. No,
Mhm.
by state law, no, you cannot.
Right. Correct. Okay. Let me jump in here because one of the misconceptions that I have until just this moment was that when someone is trafficked, they were removed from their environment. But you're telling me that your daughter was still in your home and this was happening to her. See, that's new to me. I would have never thought that that fit the definition, because I thought they were snatched away, lured in, removed from their environment so that no one would know what was going on with them. They would just be missing. So your daughter wasn't missing. She was there, she was present, and you began to pick up on behaviors that
Mhm.
were different from the norm. Okay.
Yes. So continue on with that, as you mentioned that my daughter was home.
Okay.
So this is actually kind of also, I wouldn't say tricky, but just understanding and seeing the cycle of your child. Like for instance, my child was at home,
Hmm.
slowly seeing the behavior changing, and also um her leaving home without permission, which that turned out to be changing in as far as that she would be gone. She wouldn't come home the next day, but then that changed and she wasn't coming home weeks and then months. So
Wow.
that took a change that within a year, which as a parent, we speaking for myself, we don't I was going through so many different challenges. I was mourning the loss of my son,
Oh,
and I was going also through divorce. So a lot of the parents also are going through situations that sometimes that takes us away from really focusing on what's really going with our children. My daughter
yeah.
was 14. That was the year she turned 15. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm dealing with my own things personally, which I kind of took my eyes off of her, thinking, okay, she's 15. She can take care of herself, right?
Yes.
So
Hmm.
that was really a hard, difficult time. So, and honestly, I can share that this nightmare was 5 years long.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so at the end of the year, that's actually when I was involved in church, going to events, and that is actually when literally God really opened my eyes and showed me what was really going on with my daughter. My daughter,
Wow.
my
And
daughter was
that's a really important point is our life is not in a box, and our life is not only one event. There's multiple things. As a parent, you could also be a grandparent, you could be working, you could be a wife, you could be busy in your community. There's so many different things that life consists of. So I definitely understand when you say, especially by her being a teenager, and up to this point, it sounds like she was a responsible teenager. So you felt, okay, I can trust her to do some things on her own. And
Mhm.
I didn't know that you had lost a son. My condolences to you. I never knew that. As long as we've been knowing each other, I never knew that. So my condolences to you. So
Thank
I this is painting the picture, and this is good. This is good to find out. So my next question is, as a mother, what emotions did you experience as a result of your daughter's experience with human trafficking? What, once you found out and saw what was transpiring in her life, how did you feel about that?
Uh, as I reflect, going back and just looking, as a parent, which I have noticed that parents go through a cycle, different stages, just
Hmm.
as our children, when they become victims, they also go through a cycle. But as a parent, um, when I first found out what exactly was going on, and again, which this cycle doesn't go in step one, two, three, four. It can actually go in different cycles. So when I first found out about it, I can honestly say that I was in denial. I
Okay.
couldn't believe it. I was also angry. Um, I was mad because, I would tell myself, this is now how I raised my daughter.
Mm,
And as time went by, um, the next cycle that I went through was um, resentment, embarrassed, ashamed.
okay.
Um, and then After, I would say, maybe 2 years is when I also realized that my house was turned upside down. Not
Mm,
only did it affect me, but it also affected my whole family.
yes.
So, and with that, um, you know, with that is when I noticed that my relationship with my daughter was not there. That was still my little girl, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a whole totally different person. And what I realized in that is like, okay, my daughter isn't home hardly. There were constantly fights over just the smallest little things. But my kids actually also hated their sister because they would see her come and go, but when she would come, there would constantly arguments, fights. I mean, constantly making reports to the police. So there's different cycles, and that one cycle there that I realized, like, hey, I'm actually fighting with my daughter, and I'm actually pushing her out of the home.
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
that's when I stopped and realized, like, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
My fight isn't with her. My fight is against these traffickers.
Right. So at
And
that point, you were aware that she was involved in human trafficking.
yes.
Okay. Because you mentioned earlier, you said, I didn't raise my daughter this way. So when you were making that comment, what did you think was happening?
Well, how things actually, at first, I thought it was just a rebellious, typical teenager that wanted just to go out, right, with
Mhm,
friends and party. But then I started actually realizing that this is actually more because these her so-called friends that I knew that I've also invited over my home, let them
mhm.
spend the night, allowed her to go out with them. These were the actually friends that introduced her to a trafficker, introduced her how to take inappropriate pictures and put them on social media.
Oh, wow.
So, and this, and it can happen anywhere. This happened to take place right in my own community.
Yes. So how you said this was a 5-year journey. So how did it resolve at the end of those 5 years?
Oh, wow. It's so many, within those 5 years, so many stuff just took place. Um, so how it was resolved was, like I mentioned, two of her friends would actually, they informed me what my daughter was involved, where she was at, the people. So because they opened up and let me know what was going on with my daughter, as a parent, I changed how I was reacting. So those 5 years, they would allow my daughter to come home, but she was also away certain times. So I already knew the cycle as to when my daughter was out and she would come home, she would be out all night. She would come in the morning and sleep. So what I started doing was when she was asleep, I started getting her phone,
Okay.
start writing phone numbers. When she would get picked up, because these people have no shame. They will literally go to your home,
Mm,
pick her up. So as this happened, I would actually follow her right behind her. I would take pictures of the vehicles picking her up. And when they noticed that, they would actually park 2 blocks down. And other times she would actually walk away. And what do you see? I was not afraid of going down there and just taking pictures of them. So
o-
whatever information I had, I would actually provide that to the law enforcement, because during this time, um, was that when my daughter was running away, I would constantly make actually reports that she ran away. So my
o-
daughter was known as a vicious runaway from the police. The
mm,
police department already knew, you know, my name. And so that's actually what took place, was that one particular time was that my daughter wasn't home. Her friend told me that she was in danger and that they were not allowing her to come home.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she sent me a video. And from that video, I even told her friend, "Are you willing to come with me to the police station?" Because she knew these people. Again,
Mm-hmm.
mind you, that this is a friend and these were her friends, right? So we went to the police station. I told, the police officers that my daughter's not just a runaway. There's other things that is happening with my daughter, and my daughter's life is at risk. So that is when turned in the video, um, and then they actually opened up a case. So now it wasn't just a runaway. Now it has been transferred over to trafficking.
Wow. They have an actual trafficking department in the police station.
Yes, and that's another thing that I've learned within this 5 years is that and what I hear a lot also too, which I went through a lot of heartache because the times that I will make the police reports, they will only take it as a bitch's runaway, in which that
Yeah.
normal, but every department is different. Not every department is trained in human trafficking.
Right.
And so if you get a call, if you report the child that is missing, and as a parent, if you don't have evidence or information that you can prove that your child is being trafficked, they will not take the case. It has to be really strong evidence that your child was
Right.
being
And
trafficked.
so that video gave you the strong evidence that you needed to have it changed from one department to the other.
Yes, and that's how a case was opened.
Absolutely. That's a blessing. Awesome. Now, let me ask you this. I know now you serve as a parent advocate. So, was it your daughter's experience that led you into the human trafficking sector yourself as an advocate?
Yes, that's my reason why,
Hmm.
and why I have a position as being as a parent advocate. I'm not a professional, but I am a lived experience. Um,
Yes.
Firsthand knowing what a parent goes through. And it's very difficult. During those 5 years, I came across a lot of parents who had their child who's been trafficked, because when a parent first finds out that the child has been trafficked, not only are you dealing with the traffickers, but when a case is open, you also have to deal with the Department of Children's Services. You also
Okay.
have to go to court. You also have to deal with wraparound services. So your life, your home becomes an open book.
Mm.
And that is so stressful for a parent, because parent in their mind, they are going through trauma themselves, that their mindset is not at the right level.
Right.
Because when a case is first open, you actually have so many different staff from the Department of Children's Services. First, you have an investigating social worker, and then you also have a regular social worker. But within that time, you're not stuck with one social worker. You get multiple social workers. So there's so much that the parent goes through that I have seen firsthand, that a parent has to juggle, meaning that, okay, my child is going through this, but I have to work. I have to make sure that they go to court. I have to make sure that they meet with the wraparound services. I have to make sure that I attend those meetings. So some parents have actually lost their jobs because of having so much to help their child, to make sure that they go to court, to make sure that they're going into the meetings, home visits, law enforcement. There's just so much to not just dealing with your child who's being trafficked, and also going through trauma and being re-traumatized every time your child goes out.
Wow. Yeah, so yeah, I can understand what you mean by juggling. There's a lot of components, a lot of factors. And I could also see that a parent has to make a choice to either help the child or push it aside and maintain their livelihood.
Yes.
Sometimes it comes down to that. Now, if you have an employer who is understanding about what you're going through and works with you as you're navigating through that circumstance, that would absolutely be helpful. But I can just see the difficulty that's presented in that with all of those appointments. And like you said, having your home intruded upon, but because there's been another intrusion that precipitated that response. So it's like a domino effect of everything that happens afterward. But to get your child to safety and to bring some normality back to your life, I can see that all of those steps are definitely needed for that to transpire.
Yeah, and another thing, a very important factor also that I want to mention is your mental state, your health.
Yes.
As for me, I literally, it did affect my health. I've actually went through depression. Like I mentioned, I went through a loss of my son, and then and going through a divorce, and then having my child be trafficked. All that affected me, and also just seeing my daughter going, coming, and during that trafficking, also that I wanted to mention that this is a serious crime. It's a violent crime. My daughter was beaten up. Her jaw was broken in a couple of places.
Wow.
You know, there's other stuff, um, that I've seen my daughter just going through, also drugs, alcohol, but that also affected me, that I went through depression. So
Mm.
I was vulnerable, and this was still going on with my daughter. And I just want to say also too that at some point as a parent, and that's for myself, is that I noticed that I was weak. And if my daughter seen me weak, how can I help her? How can she feel safe? Right. So at this
Right.
point, it's like I started noticing that, not started noticing, but I noticed, if I'm not healthy and I am not in a strong place, how can I let my daughter see and know that she's safe when she comes home? Because
Right.
these traffickers offer protection, they offer money, they
Mm.
offer them love, which is not genuine love. It's
Right.
right. So these are the things that I started thinking, is like, okay, I need to be healthy, to be strong, to be able to help her, and that she can see that I can, that she can feel safe. So that's another thing that um, I started just building myself up, being involved in church, not
Hmm.
letting that, stop me. Um, got off the anti-depression drugs and started getting educating, going to events, finding out what human trafficking was, so I can better understand my daughter, because there was no communication. The only communication we had was arguments,
Right.
so it was really hard.
But that's good that you were able to look outside of yourself and see the help that she needed, while at the same time looking within to see the help that you needed.
Yes.
And I could only imagine, because I can't fathom this truly at all, but I could only imagine what she may have been going through, what was probably said to her that kept her engaging, and then looking at, well, if I don't do this, what's going to happen over here? And who can protect me on this side against these evil forces that have pulled me in to this world? So we never know the mentality of a victim and their circumstances and what they're going through. But at least you being in that close proximity to her and being able to look at her and saying, this is still my child. No
Mhm.
matter what she's wrapped up in, no matter what they're doing to her, this is still my child. And I somehow have to find a way to pull her back, to get
Yeah.
her back to a place of safety. So I definitely commend you for that. I could only imagine that there are some children who have been pulled in, and maybe even young adults as well, who didn't have a family support system that could do that for them, and they're still lost in that world.
Mhm.
So absolutely, my hat goes off to you in that, and it does take so much strength to be able to do that. And I know you mentioned your faith, being immersed in the word of God, and then your church family. But did you have a core group of women who surrounded you that was able to hold up your arms and say, "We're here with you, we're here for you, you can lean on us," as you went through that time?
Yes, I can say I had a group of sisters from my church, and we would actually meet up every Tuesday to do group prayer and also just continue praying for me and just letting me know that they were there for me. They didn't judge me. They didn't point fingers at me. Um, and that was actually beautiful because I've noticed that parents feel alone and they actually have no one to talk to. So having a group of women that you are able to open up and just just pour out and cry, because when you
Yeah.
hold that in, you're holding yourself in bondage. And
Yes.
so um and the other thing is, as we know, is iron sharpens iron, right? So when you have other sisters that are just building you up, encouraging you, and just praying, that helped me build even my faith even stronger in God,
Mm.
knowing that I heard his words tell me, your daughter is going to come out of this. And that's what I stood on, the word that God gave me. It didn't matter what negativity from other people from outside my group. That's not what I listened to. I listened to what God told me. Your
Amen.
daughter's
And
going to
that's
overcome
good.
this.
That's powerful. And, we go through so much in our life alone. It's called silent suffering. We suffer because we don't think other people will understand,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that they haven't been in that situation. But the way God designed us is that we can be sympathetic, if not empathetic, to other people having not been there. And it's so powerful that you said they were there without judgment, because you already have thoughts going on in your own mind, and you may have been asking yourself, how did I contribute? And like you said, you were focused on other things. And so there comes blame, there comes hurt, there comes, like you said, the spirit of depression. But God gave you a way of escape. And he gave you people who could be in your corner, even if they had never been there, even if they didn't fully understood. But even if they didn't fully understand, but they loved you enough to be there. They cared for you enough to be there, to give you that comfort, to give you those prayers, to give you those words that would allow you to take the next step, that would allow you to hang on. And like you said, to pour out and just to have a safe space where you could pour out and shed those tears, where in other times you would have to be strong. So that is so powerful. And that's what our sisters do for us. That's what our core group of women do for us. Now, going back to you and your role as a parent advocate, what exactly does that consist of?
So my role as being a parent advocate, it consists, like I mentioned, I am a lived experience parent who had a child who was trafficked. So I know firsthand what parents are going through emotionally.
Mm.
Not only that, but as they're also faced with an open case with DCFS, is letting them know that they're not alone. I walk alongside of them through their journey to advocate for them and speak for them, and also provide them psychoeducation in ways of communicating, understanding, and how to love them. So as I met with parents, I've seen the difference when a parent doesn't have one, they don't have someone to speak for them
Mhm.
because they are misunderstood. As far as, like, they may think that a parent does not want to engage or comply with the courts or with law enforcement, and that's not true. Being a parent advocate is that this is where I can come in and speak for them and give the authorities a different side of a parent, like let them know, hey, Do you know that this parent is going through this? As I shared about myself, that I was going through a divorce, I was going through a loss of a child. And it's not, and it wasn't that I wasn't compliant, because that was also told about me,
Mm,
that I was not complying, that I was hard to reach, I wouldn't return her phone calls. So that is where I come in and advocate for the parents and give the authorities a different look. Hey, it's not that the parent doesn't want to engage or does not want to comply or is not answering phone calls, but this is what the parent is dealing with. They are
mhm.
also going through secondary trauma, that it's hard for them to pick up the phone or make the appointments, or why they don't feel that they can join the meetings. It's not that the parent doesn't want to. We have to take a look at that. You know what? The parent is also going through trauma themselves.
Yeah,
And so,
that's powerful. Yeah,
mhm,
that's really powerful because I can see the gap in communication and the miscommunication and the misinformation and the disinformation that is
mhm,
being compiled. Because when you're on one side of the law, you only see the legal aspect. But if you haven't walked in that person's shoes, or if you haven't been in the field long enough, you really don't have any idea. So I can only imagine by your presence and being able to explain it in a comprehensible manner, having been there and now standing with someone who is going through as you had gone through, you're that voice of hope. You're that voice of reason for the authority that's listening on the other side. And I can just believe that after they have met you and spoken to you for the next case, for the next person that doesn't have a parent advocate, they remember now. So it
yes,
definitely makes a difference in the whole long chain. So that's really powerful. Even
that,
I believe even more than you know, even more than you realize, just hearing it and visualizing it, because that person who's just doing their job, they're asking questions, they're trying to get things done, but it's not going the way they think it should go. But now they begin to put the picture together because of what you have said. So that's awesome. And that's going to impact and change their career, and so they can be more helpful going forward for the next family that comes before them. So that's really powerful what you're doing. Awesome.
thank you. And another thing that I wanted to add also is, like I mentioned, that parents have an open case, right? So here
Mm-hmm.
comes the social worker. And that's another misconception, that parents feel that the social workers is against them because the case is on the child. So a parent advocate is also the bridge for
Yeah.
that social worker, because parents don't want to meet with the social workers, right? Number one, because they're, I now that I understand what the social worker role is, and also knowing different social workers, the parent again, which I go back, they said, well, I already met with the social worker. Some parents say, I don't have a social worker. No, you do have a social worker. Your
Mm-hmm.
child's social worker is your social worker. So there's so many um that the authority, not authority, but the DCF language, I explain that to parents, because there's different, there's different scenarios what parents are dealing with. A parent could be dealing with their child that has been removed. Okay, what is reunification? What's the process with that? Okay, my parents on, I'm sorry, my child is on probation. Okay, what's that? There's different scenarios, different cases, but the parent doesn't know from step A, two, and three, and who the staff is, what the role is, what the wraparound services role is. So as a parent advocate, I also come and communicate with my parents and just assess them to see how I can help them and understanding certain cases, or where they're at, or what they can do. So a lot of parents actually really don't know what staff is what, or who to call. Let's just say your child is actually runs away again. They don't know what to do. So
Mm-hmm.
working alongside with aside alongside of them is that I also help them to think about approaching your children in different ways, and also giving them some new information that maybe never thought about. Excuse me, as far as to like having a safety plan for
Mm-hmm.
yourself and having a safety plan for your child.
Yes. Yes. And that's really good. Again, speaking and just giving that clarity on both sides of the table. is what I'm hearing. And that's really good because it bridges those gaps again in communication so that everybody wants the case to move forward. They want to try to reach some type of resolution. So if they can do that in a more expedient manner, then that is fantastic. Are you okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. Now, share with us what are some safety measures a person can take, not only a parent for a child, but maybe a full-fledged adult who is on his or her own. What can a person do to avoid being trafficked?
What a person can do is learn about human trafficking, learn uh, about the safety online also, knowing the signs, knowing who traffickers are, because it can be anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It can be your neighbor. I mean, at this point, also learning to say no, setting boundaries also. Um, there's also teaching safety precautions, having conversations um, on how to use in social media, and also to know how to say no. Because sometimes we try to be nice and we don't say no. You know, if someone offers you something, it's just
Right.
and that goes along with the setting boundaries. Um,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
also finding resources out there, finding information.
Sometimes people don't want to stop and do exactly what you're saying. Is basically be informed. Sometimes people don't want to stop and do that because, again, they think it's not going to happen to me. But like you said, oh, it's right here in our neighborhood. It hits so
Yes,
close to home, and we never know what a person is doing in their home next door, across the street, down the street. We don't know, actually don't know how close it is to us and in our communities. So that information is vitally important. We need to take time out and educate ourselves, and if not even for ourselves, for our children, our grandchildren. What's happening when they're walking home from school or getting off the school bus or even in their schools. We don't know what's happening in the schools these days.
yes,
So, being informed, and I think another good one is paying attention. Watch your children, see who they're talking to, know who they're engaging with, look at their social media accounts if they have them, and be aware if you're getting weird text messages or somebody has tapped into your social media as an adult and has befriended you, because we never know where the next trafficker may be. So we really need to keep ourselves safe, keep our family safe, and just be more vigilant and not to be so aloof and disengaged. We need to be more engaged and more aware of our surroundings and our circumstances.
yes, so true.
And the final question that I have for you is, how do you think your personal experience as you walked with your daughter through her experience, how do you think it would have been different if you didn't have that circle of sisters around you? If you didn't have those people saying, you can count on me, I'm here with you. How do you think it would have been different?
If I didn't have uh the group around me supporting me,
Yes.
I think I would have lost it. I wouldn't be here today.
Wow.
I literally would have lost my daughter.
Wow. Well, we're so happy that that didn't happen. We're so
Amen.
happy that God saw fit to put people in your life. And one thing I always say to people is, God did not create us to be an island. If He wanted us to be all alone, He would have literally given us an individual island to live on where we didn't have to associate with other people. Now, I understand that we were born alone and we are going to die alone. But through this human journey, we are to be surrounded by people. And they don't have to be people related to us by blood. They do not have to be people related to us by marriage. It's whoever God sees fit to put in our core circle so that we can rely upon. We may not have walked in their shoes. We may never experience what they have experienced. But if we can have enough compassion, if we can have a heart to love another sister as she is going through, then we can make it in this life. Yes, we stand strong and yes, we stand tall, but we are better together.
Amen.
Minister Sylvia, I thank you so much for sharing the vital information on human trafficking that you shared. I am so thankful that you were there for your daughter to see her to the other side of this journey. I'm glad that God gave you people to carry you through as you too were suffering as she went through. Watching your child suffer is heartbreaking. So I'm so thankful that you were able to be on the other side of the journey and to help other families because you didn't just say, you know what, I got her through it and thank God and we're done. You said, let me see who else I can help. And see, that's what being a minister is all about.
Mm.
And I thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Sisters Keeper podcast. May the Lord be with you and keep you well. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the privilege and opportunity to share my lived experience in the hopes of giving another parent, even if it's just one parent, giving them hope. You know, with God, all things are possible. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that's true because he can do all things. Stay safe, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a blessed day.
Okay, thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Sisters Keeper. This was truly an informative episode on human trafficking. I pray that none of you will ever experience human trafficking, but as we said, it can happen to anyone. Danger is always lurking right around the corner. So be safe, do your research, learn more about human trafficking, and watch your children, watch your grandchildren, know what they're doing. And I pray that the Lord would have a hedge of protection around you. And please join me for the next episode of Sisters Keeper podcast. God bless you.